now it was a real pleasure because, this next speaker will talk about things that are like really challenging for a lot of B2B brands, but also, an established company, how it does that transition. We have a lot of insights coming from him. So without more consideration, I'd like to welcome on stage the Senior Vice President of Web and Digital Marketing at Schneider Electric, Mr. Shawn Burns. Hello.
Hey, Ben.
Hey. The first thing I want to ask you, why are you here?
Why am I here?
Why Schneider Electric is at LeWeb',
Yeah, it's a very good question. We're in France, so maybe some people actually know Schneider Electric. If you don't, we are a definitive old school manufacturing brand, right?
Who knows Schneider Electric? Just raise hands. Schneider, like everybody.
Okay, this is why it's wonderful to be in France, right? That doesn't happen in any other room. But it's a 170-year-old company, right? So everything from electrical engineering, distribution, energy maintenance, everything in the energy supply chain, we do. And so in one way, you would say, why would we be at the web? Why would we be at the web? Why? Well, here's the answer to why. We're in the digital transformation room, right? Or the hall or the summit. And we're going through our own digital transformation.
Your own right now.
Our own.
It's happening.
Schneider Electric, it's happening in real time, I think to probably every industrial company. And I find the word transformation interesting because I actually prefer the word disruption. Mm-hmm. Because digital transformation is when I see somebody who's working just off of a code stack, and you see a lot of the startups, and I spent some time with the booths, and I saw the talks. When you're working just with code, you think about transformation. When you're working with manufacturing and plants and engineering and old school, really heavy lifting industry, it's disruption, right? I mean, this is an industry that's changing, and we have to start thinking about what does the next 100 years of Schneider Electric look like? And that's one of the reasons we're at LeWeb'.
Oh, that's fascinating. So we'll have a picture of the next 100 years for you guys.
That's it. You're going to slingshot it. We're going to get the answers here, we're going to give some questions here, and we're going to know what the future is. Yep.
Make sure to ask the questions through the mobile app, okay? So interact in the mobile app. We'll take a lot of questions at the end. So give me some examples of how you do it right now, your digital transformation at Schneider Electric.
Yeah, I like that. And I'll take that question as simple as I can because in terms of industry, in terms of buildings, in terms of the complexity of the business, we'll take it as simple as it goes. Schneider produces plugs and light switches in my home, in your parents' home. And this has always been, I mean, for my entire life, this has been an analog experience, right? Lights go on, lights go off. We don't think about it, it doesn't occur to us. Nobody has any engagement with it other than on and off, and it better work, or I have to call the electrician, or I have to replace the switch. Plugs are the same way. Juice has to be there when I plug in my device. But all of a sudden, that exact same device is now throwing off a massive amount of data. This used to be an analog device on and off, and we as a company were rewarded for manufacturing the best possible switches, plugs, circuits, boards, panel builders, whatever you can imagine that the world had to offer. And now all of a sudden, it's about the data. It's about the information that this silly little analog device is now throwing off, and what do we do with all that data, and what does that mean to the data? And so this transformation is the world may not be any longer just about the plug. We actually have to add something on top of that because somebody's asking the question. I can tell you, for the manufacturers who are running Schneider products in their factories, for the buildings, for the offices that are running Schneider solutions in their buildings, they're asking questions like, what do we do with this data? How can we use all this data instead of lights going on and off? And that's the transformation happening right now.
Okay, and so that's the key thing we were talking about this earlier. So probably some of your clients are more familiar or digital savvy, as you say, than some of your salespeople.
Yeah, it's
Would you admit that?
Yeah, I love that. I love that analogy because if you're running a building, and the building begins to talk to you, right? And I actually would say it as simple as that. So the building, your job primarily historically is the building works, security services, light, network, it works. But now the building's talking to you. Yeah. Okay? There's sensors. It's throwing off a lot of data. Every plug, every switch, every aspect of your building's talking to you, and you have a tendency to call Schneider and go, what do I do with all this data? What do I do with it? What's the next step in how I manage and make my building more efficient? And it's not surprising to go, hey, that's a good question, right?
Good question. Come back next year. No?
That's a good question. Now we have to go back into R&D. And that's where the R&D excellence comes out. Mm-hmm. But the reality is and this is happening in every industry, but it's much more, I find it much more interesting in ours, and that's why I like the word disruption, because it's changing the way we look at everything we do, because now you go, okay, let's take a chunk of R&D, and this is the focus, right? And it's not so much about the next generation of the plugs, yes, we have to do that, okay. Circuits, yes, we have to do that, but what about the building that talks to you? What about the software that actually allows you to maintain that and analyze that and do things from it? So it's a very interesting thing. And the customers, you do that with the customers because they push you in that space, and it gets very interesting.
And how does it look like inside Schneider? You know, because you just talked about how you are forced by disruption, and I'm really curious to know inside the company, you know, how does the transformation looks like?
Yeah, so
or the disruption, as you like to call it.
Yeah, disruption, right.
Inside the company, like in terms of culture, skills.
Yeah, culture, we'll do culture second. Culture is the one place where it actually works in our favor, right? I mean, we are, for any of you that know electrical engineers, they are the ultimate do-it-yourselfers, right? I mean, amazing spirit in electrical engineering to go, oh, there's a problem? Let me just grab my kit and we'll just start playing around. I mean, that's what an electrical engineer does. So when you go through a disruption, that's where culture, especially at Schneider Electric, works in your favor, because they just want to sort it out, right? Throw some tools on the table, grab some cable and some cords, get some software laptops, and let's figure some things out. That's the good side of it. The challenge inside is that electrical engineering starts to evolve to computer engineering. And we've seen data scientists. I saw a talk earlier where somebody was trying to automate actually being a doctor, right?
Oh, yeah,
I mean, literally, big data was basically automating the medical profession. And so, you know, as software continues to eat the world, if anybody's ever heard that, if software continues to eat the world, it also changes inside of Schneider. And so, you know, so you look at I always look at make versus sell, right? Companies can be very easily simplified into, there's a whole bunch of people that make stuff, and there's a whole bunch of people that sell the stuff.
Yeah.
So on the make side, the engineers have to evolve, because instead of actually playing, you know, with the physical, they now start to play with the digital, and all of that stuff has to go into the software layer and the application layer. So that's cultural change, and that's skill change number one. Now you go on the sell side, right? The other part of the company that sells all this stuff. And I'm a marketing and sales guy by design, okay? And we spend a lot of time, sales programs, marketing campaigns. We saw some great examples earlier from Bosch of some campaigns they put in market. All of this, and anybody who works in sales and marketing, I'm sure there's a ton of you, it's a nuanced field, right? Yeah. We work a lot from our senses. We work not so much from science. Yes, there's a lot of science involved. But what happens when the factory begins to talk and the building begins to talk and your homes, right? The one we saw from, I don't know how you pronounce it, but Smofy, right?
Yeah, something, yeah.
And when the home begins to talk, right? All of a sudden, they can ask for what they want, right? The factory can simply ask the cloud that it's time for maintenance.
Yeah, yeah.
The factory can simply ask the cloud that it's missing a spare part. The building will tell you that X, Y, and Z is out to date or needs maintenance. And so all of a sudden you go, what is the role of sales and marketing if at scale, every factory and every building and every home begins to ask proactively for what it already needs?
New roles for a CMO. I mean, new challenges.
That's where it goes, right? So that's the transformation. So sales and marketing start to change dramatically. CMO team starts to change dramatically. So make has to evolve to different skills inside engineering, and the sales and marketing have to evolve. And that's, you know, I would say you will see less and less and less traditional Marcom personalities in these companies, and more and more and more, I almost want to say the word data scientists, but people that are able to work with that level of data and see the opportunities with automation, see the opportunities with technology, and find how we're going to drive revenue.
So you're bridging the gap in terms of skill sets as well. That's the question. Where do you come from yourself? It's an interesting point.
Yeah, thanks, Ben, for mentioning that. It's a good example of cultural change. I'm a software guy by design.
Okay.
And so I spent 8 years at SAP doing software, doing digital, doing marketing, doing sales, doing a lot of lead gen, doing telesales. And so all of a sudden, you know, why is Schneider at LeWeb'? Well, maybe why am I at Schneider, right? I mean, that's our own corporate change management, which is as industrial engineering, as electrical engineering becomes digital, so do the skill set, so do the talent. And so you see more and more I don't say people like me, but you see more and more varied skill sets coming.
Can you, so sorry, no, but do you have some tips or recommendations to people who are hiring now, like in terms of HR, you know, like how do you look at this? Are you
it's really
take more risk, or how do you try those talents? You know?
Yeah, you do. You know, this is very French of me. If anybody will appreciate that. I prefer to hire mathematicians.
Okay.
Right? Even into marketing and sales positions, who actually are completely comfortable with the data set and can be taught everything else. If you take somebody who's an excellent sales and marketing person and try and teach them mathematics, you have a very big bridge to cross.
Okay, so take away, hire a mathematician.
Take away, hire mathematicians.
Okay. So
statisticians are not bad as well, and you can go from there.
I had a question about the opportunities in the space, so I guess that one opportunity is learn math.
One of the opportunities in our business space, or opportunities for anybody?
Yeah, for your business.
Yeah, so this is where it gets interesting. All of our opportunities, the growth, right? There's two areas. One is we move from products to solutions, right? And that's easier said than done. But you sit there and you go, we probably have 1 million different products, SKUs that you can acquire from Schneider, from plugs and breakers and circuit boards, all the way to industrial, you know, medium voltage to run full manufacturing plants. So we have 1 million products. But what happens is all of these products start to come together around the data layer. And this becomes what we call solutions. And so why would you buy a lighting product for your building? Why would you buy an energy product for your manufacturing when you can start to weave these together, lighting, energy, security, maintenance, monitoring, et cetera, and all of that becomes a complete building solution. So opportunity one is the data layer starts to technology ties everything in this room together that uses energy, ties it into one thing. And so solutions becomes an opportunity space, okay? That's sort of growth area number one for us as a company, and probably for a lot of you. Growth area number two is then new opportunities from the data layer. So I can literally tell you, okay, 10 years ago, I had to buy lights. If I'm running this facility, right, I had to buy lights, I had to buy security, I had to buy this, that. You know, you can imagine the cabling, everything that goes into this room I had to purchase as a facility manager, install it, hope it works. Today, we can imagine that same guy buys one thing, you know, a facility solution, right? And then he runs everything from his iPad. We can somehow imagine that, right? It's not hard to appreciate automation and things.
Does it exist already?
It does. It absolutely exists already, and it's growing like crazy. Okay. So this is a solution. But wait, so that's sort of step one, and it's happening. But we still have this thing called big data. So now I'm a facility manager. Everything's going through my tablet. Sensors, if anybody's in the sensor market, and I met somebody who actually manufactures sensors for everything at dinner last night. Sensors are dirt cheap, right? Cost of technology is just rock bottom. You can put sensors everywhere. Right? Yeah. Everywhere, right? Every square meter of this room could be monitored at some level. And that will help you, again, with your iPad app, run it, be more efficient, make sure the building's hot or cold. But in addition, there's terabytes of data being kicked off every single second from all those sensors and from all this utilization that nobody's doing anything with right now.
Okay.
And that's the greenfield, right?
May I ask the question, sorry, because you have... all that you say is about, okay, we are doing this, we are starting to do it. Are you already doing it? Are you late?
We are, it's very interesting. It is changing very fast. Would I say we're late? I would say we're running as fast as we can, but so is everybody else.
How many employees?
At Schneider Electric?
Yeah.
Only 160,000.
How do you make them run so fast?
Yeah, change management's a big deal. You have to have a compelling interest. And there's a couple of things that allow us with change management. One is you'll see from recent acquisitions, Telvent and Vensis, acquisitions are happening more often in the software space.
In software.
So all
like
of a sudden,
startups and stuff like that.
Startup software, and you see the change management happening. And we run internal incubators.
So if a startup is in the field, can they go to you to pitch you?
Not me directly, but Schneider, yes.
Oh, you can help them.
Yeah, there are a few startups here. I noticed that from LeWeb', right?
Okay.
I noticed that from LeWeb'. Yeah, but that's very interesting. We also, you may find this interesting or not, one of my roles is I am responsible for our corporate websites, right? So SchneiderElectric.com is one of the things I do, and the 160 country websites that we monitor. In every other company I talk to, that's a marketing job, right?
Yeah.
That sits under the CMO. The CMO is responsible for the websites, an extension of the brand. pretty obvious and straightforward. The reality is not at all, right? I actually don't sit in marketing. I sit in an incubator inside Schneider.
Oh, cool.
So I sit in an incubator called the Digital Customer Experience. It's tied to a P&L business. I won't give you an org chart because it's incredibly complex. But we have to realize is I don't sit in marketing. Now, why don't I sit in marketing? Because the web is only a portal to every app and every piece of software and every customer user community that we provide to our customer base.
Yeah.
So if you understand that it actually is just the door to our own software, you would actually step back and go, well, why would it be in marketing? That's actually the product. The product is the browser, right? Which is pretty amazing to say for a company that for 170 years has been producing electrical components, right? And that's what's going on.
Yeah. Any other challenge that you like to share with us among those challenges that we're just discussing right now?
Yeah, I will give you the other side of the coin.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll give you the other side of the coin. So the biggest opportunity is greenfield. Big data is the biggest opportunity we have. The biggest challenge we have, and if you ask me what kept me up at night, right? What I lose sleep over? The biggest challenge we have is big data. Now, why is that a challenge? Because for 170 years, people, especially this room, because you all raised your hand, you know Schneider, said, I'm going to buy Schneider because it's the best possible product to manage my electricity. And you don't mess around with electricity, right? People die when they play with electricity, and you got to know what you're doing, and fire standards and security, so you buy the best, right? You buy the best when you're worried about your house, your building, your property, your plant. So you buy Schneider. What if tomorrow what's more important is not the widget, but the data layer? And that's when you start talking about services. That's when you start talking about apps, right? Applications. That's when you start talking about analysis, insights, efficiency, predictive modeling. If the data layer becomes more important than the widget, we have a problem.
Yeah, a big one.
Because guess what? Everybody out there can play in the data layer. There's a certain cost to entry to start manufacturing panels for electrical plants, right? Not everybody can just do that. There's a cost of entry. Everybody out there, though, with very little cost of entry, can start playing with the data layer. So that is the single biggest challenge, and that's why we run a lot of incubators, because we have to be fast like a startup in the middle of a 160,000 person firm that's 170 years old. Because speed's happening right there, and it's also got to happen here. And that's the challenge.
Let's have a look at the question. One question from the audience coming is exactly that. You see a lot of pushback from the legacy teams in your company, product manufacturing to software solutions.
Do we see a lot of pushback?
Yes.
Yeah, I wouldn't use the word pushback. In fact, Schneider, I mean, it's an R&D culture. It's creative like nothing I've ever experienced. I mean, even from a software guy, where I mean, I used to run websites at SAP, and in a software company, that's tough because everybody who does software can build a website, right? So it's really amazing to see even the level of creativity. So there's no pushback, but like all organizations, there's a tendency to do in the future what's worked for us in the past. So it's not pushback, but it's just the normal resilience to change, and that's where you have to create that compelling reason.
What about your startups coming from your internal incubator? Any interesting ideas yet?
The startups, yeah. I could show you apps. Maybe we do that as a follow-up, but I could show you apps one after another after another to run literally large-scale facilities from a dashboard that your grandmother could operate. And so you go, I mean, facility management is a professional occupation, it's a complicated occupation, and all of a sudden you're seeing UIs that are so beautiful and so intuitive, you literally say to yourself, I mean, not that my grandma doesn't know technology, but you say to yourself, my grandmother could run this building. Yeah. Right? I mean, that level of intuitivity. I mean, that's when you see the startups really happening, boom. And then you get in, and then you get into all sorts of efficiencies around order management. We live and die off of our ecosystem. Yeah. Partners, installers, distributors. We're a manufacturer at our heart. We live and die by the ecosystem. Everything you see in incubation is basically shortening the distribution time frame. Yeah, right?
You get the innovation cycle more.
Innovation cycle, literally find an installer. I mean, who's ever done work in their house and asked themselves, where am I going to get an electrician? Even something as fundamental as, where am I going to get a good electrician? That can become, as we know, from social, from crowdsourcing, from technologies. We're trying to animate that for our own ecosystem of electricians, so that becomes almost real time for all of our customers who come to us to try and tap into that very same ecosystem.
That's a crazy story. I love that story. You know, we could talk about it a lot more. One takeaway, we talk about disruption, not only transformation, and we talk about higher mathematicians. I love this idea. I'll take that with me as well. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ben.
Sean.
Thanks for the invite.
Thanks.